And we're back. It is April the 5th. We're 5 days into the second quarter.
I know, just like that, second quarter.
Yep, it's crazy. So how about this as a good topic? Now, I'm not sure if I'm in love with your title, to be honest with you.
You can change it.
It's still good. So Julie wrote 12 strategies to stop toxic people from driving you nuts. You know, the whole toxic part, that word's overused, don't you think?
Probably. We could call them crazy people. We could call them stressful people.
Crazy's definitely a protected class.
Yeah,
You got to watch
true.
out with that. Yeah, but I'll work on
Wound
that.
up people.
But the takeaway, though, is valid, right? 12 strategies to stop, jerks from driving you nuts. How about that?
Yeah, I'll tell you why I brought this back up, because we have talked about this on podcasts before. Is I've had several conversations, and I've also heard on Clubhouse.
With jerks?
Well, no, more like, really good agents and brokers having to deal with the anxiety that's out there, either from prospects or clients, but unfortunately, oftentimes from other agents, because especially on the buyer side, they're just all totally stressed out. And I call it like agent on agent violence, though it's not violence. It's just like psychological violence. And I was reminded by somebody that, you have to take the high road. You have to be the professional, because you don't know who's going to be the next one with the listing that your buyer needs to buy. And you don't know whether you're going to be the listing that you've got to deal with somebody whose best qualified buyer was somebody that you just had a fight with over some back and forth. So I guess from a coaching standpoint, I feel their pain, but I'm kind of tired of hearing about the back and forth. And sometimes it's coming from the client themselves. I'll tell you, there's a lot of renegotiation attempts going on. For people, the one that I just heard about on our Facebook Live was a for sale by owner that got themselves in contract, sealed up contract, the whole listing thing was fine. And 2 weeks into it wants to renegotiate with the agent. Why? Because probably somebody's coaching them in the background, found out they were in contract. Well, you're not paying that, are you? So these guys have a lot of stress, and I want to help them manage it.
So for that reason, I think we will use the word toxic, because that does.
Those are just a few examples.
Now that I'm listening to your description and why you chose that word, I can definitely see what you're talking about. But I was just scanning your points, and these are great points, Julie. Very well written. I will. There's one thing that we should have as a preamble to point number one.
Sure.
Some people really are just sociopaths.
That's true. It does exist.
Yeah, and there's a certain I remember when you and I were selling real estate, it was Rory that taught us that 1 in every 100 deals you do, the people are just going to be crazy, basically. Yeah. And maybe whatever word you want to use, they're just going to be people that you cannot make happy no matter what. Mm-hmm. And some people are just like that. Statistically, a certain percent of the population, they're either marginally sociopathic or they're sociopathic when they start experiencing any sort of stress. And so the people you meet when you go out to list their houses, the first time you meet with them showing a house, might not be the same person that they are as soon as they're having to experience any kind of stress through the negotiation process, let alone having to compete if they're on the buyer side. All that type of stuff comes out. So that's the thing that ultimately, to be successful in this business long term, you've got to be a good mix of, really Dr. Phil,
Seriously.
Dr. Phil meets, here's the other thing I was going to say too, which again, as a good preamble point is, I said Dr. Phil, but here's the thing. Good doctors, they know how to show emotion without being emotional. Mm-hmm. And that's another good safeguard to protect yourself from being emotionally sucked into some of the crazy, the vortex of bad behavior and toxicity, to use Julie's word, that's out there in the marketplace right now. So do seriously consider those two facts. I mean, the simple fact is the best way of rising above all of it and not letting people think, a lot of you are going to make the mistake of becoming a little bit too callous to it, mm-hmm. and that's going to drive people away. So you can show emotion without being emotional. Where that specifically will play out is if you're dealing with a buyer that didn't get a house and they're real upset, or a seller didn't get something and they're real upset. Listen, Julie, I really appreciate the fact that, you're experiencing what you're experiencing. It just breaks my heart for you guys. I was really hoping you guys would get into this house. Look, we didn't know that the other offer was going to come in where they're going to offer the person, $100 million over asking, but what are you going to do? But here's the thing I've discovered being in real estate a long time, or here's the thing I've discovered just in life in general, if you've not been in real estate a real long time, is that, and you may have experienced the same thing, Mr. Buyer, or Julie, this is something you may have experienced, is that generally speaking, things work out for the reasons that we don't necessarily know. For example, this house you didn't get, but maybe the reason you didn't get it is because the next one we're going to discover is 10 times better for you than this one was. And had you basically settled for this one, even though you thought you really wanted it, you would never have seen the second one, which is actually a house that you're going to want to stay in longer because it does fit more of your needs. So that's the way you got to show emotion without being emotional, and and future pace people to where how they're going to feel after the stress is gone.
Yes, and also keep the client.
But that goes back to the whole Dr. Phil thing. And you can learn this from doing a lot of transactions. I mean, Julie and I sold thousands of homes. You can do it the hard way, or you could just essentially, be coached up to learn how to do it so you don't lose deals along the way. Because if you don't, and we're going to get to point number one, if you don't build somewhat of a wall around your emotions, that's when you get really burned out. Because you're going to be having to constantly care and feed all of your real estate buyers and sellers, and you're going to have nothing left for yourself, let alone for your family. So the show emotion without being emotional thing is really important. And also moving people away from their present emotional state of feeling fear and panic and towards the future emotional state of feeling calm and serene. These are all just little things that you're going to pick up as we go through these 12 points. Before Julie gets to point number one, I remind all of you, it's not too late for you to download the Real Estate Treasure Map.